Thank you for joining us for this RTN share group on the tech playbook for scaling technology. If you're new to a share group, welcome. Welcome to your first one. We love these meetings. It's a great way for the membership community to get together and share ideas and insight and information with some of our subject matter experts that we have in the community. Please take a moment to go ahead and update your name in the participant field to include your company. If you haven't done that already, you can just hover over your name. You can click on the 3 bullets next to your name, and then you can actually go in and edit it. And I'm going to do it right now to set a good example that I am here from RTN and HT. So go ahead and get your name, your company added to your name profile, and we will get started momentarily as everybody comes on in and takes their seats. So by way of introduction, I am Abby Lorden. I am the publisher of Hospitality Technology Magazine and a co-founder of this incredible community, the Restaurant Technology Network, that has really grown to become just a fantastic place for members of the restaurant tech space to make connections, share ideas, be challenged, learn and grow, and so on, so on, so on. This is a share group meeting. Our share group meetings are opportunities for members to come together under an umbrella topic. We bring a few of our members to the microphone to speak to that topic. And then as we get towards the end of our time, we will invite the membership community that's here to come off mic and ask questions, share ideas, or certainly chat any of your thoughts into the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that. So the rules of the road, first and foremost, please stay muted until we do open the floor for group conversation. We are going to have 5 panelists taking the virtual stage with me here today. And the focus of this share group, the topics of our share groups change from one month to the next. The idea really is around coming up with things that people want to hear about. The topic of this share group is around this idea of scaling technology. We held a meeting last month where quite a few restaurant operators were on the mic, and they spoke about some of their challenges with scaling, some of the things that they have found to be successful and effective when they're rolling out things like VoIP. And quite a few questions like, okay, great, we've covered some areas of scaling. Let's keep having this conversation because it's an ongoing, persistent, perennial need to grow and add the necessary technology to grow, whether you're at growth of 1 to 5 or 5 to 50 or 50 to 1,000. So we've got a great panel put together. I have 5 members taking the mic with me today, and we're going to hear from each of them in a few minutes to talk a little bit about scaling from their perspective and their areas of expertise. The 5 panelists that we're going to hear from, I'm going to bring into the stage in a few minutes, Matt Wampler, who's the CEO and co-founder of ClearCogs. And Matt and I are going to talk about when and how to deploy AI. We'll then be hearing from Christine Schindler, who is the co-founder of PathSpot. And Christine has some really great information on how to scale and turn food safety into a scalable asset. So I love that topic. Then we're going to hear from Tony Roy with Pop Menu. Hey, Tony, to talk about building a scalable guest database. Then Courtney Radke and I, Courtney from SageNet, are going to talk about mastering a scalable network. And finally, we will hear from RTN member Casey Badoka, who recently moved from Jack in the Box to Solugenics. And Casey is going to talk about flipping your support organization to a proactive model using agentic AI and comprehensive analytics. So I'm super stoked to have that chat with Casey. 5 great speakers, lots of content to cover. As I said, take notes, take ideas, take inspiration. We'll open the mic as we get towards probably the last 15 or so minutes for some group conversation. So with that, I am going to invite my friend Matt Wampler to come off mute and join me on the mic. Matt, welcome to this share group. Great to have you here.
Abby, thanks for having me. I'll try and live up to the great speaker side of things.
You got it. You got it. Or entertaining.
I can handle entertaining.
So I think first and foremost, just help everyone who is not familiar with ClearCogs, just tell us a little bit about what ClearCogs does.
Yeah, look, at ClearCogs, we believe that if a restaurant knows their future, they can make better decisions and run a more streamlined, systemized operation. We started out as sales forecasting and predictive prep and slowly, worked our way into a back of house decision management engine. How do I get each decision right? How much do I prep? What do I order? Who do I staff? So that we run a more systemized operation.
So if you're listening to Matt and thinking, wow, he's a great speaker, that's not an accident. Matt also hosts the Restaurant AI podcast. So you have a lot of experience chatting about these topics with the market. Help us understand, Matt, just what is AI capable of actually doing today, right? That's a huge boil the ocean type of concept, but what's real?
No, I mean, Abby, I think it's a really good question because there's a lot of fear and mistrust when it comes to AI. And especially in restaurants, we've had technology let us down, for years. And so, just to kind of put it in context, AI today is capable of so much. We live in a world where they're putting computer chips in people's brains. AI has autonomous vehicles that are driving us. We've got autonomous rockets that are landing themselves on drone ships. This is a really powerful technology that is being, utilized in the real world in some amazing ways. And I think that a lot of times we lose sight of just how powerful, this really can be.
That's exciting and also kind of scary. But let's boil it down to food service and restaurants, right? Give us some good best practices for operators that they should be thinking about when they're trying to decide whether or not to put AI into their operations.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say this. Don't just go rush out and buy AI solutions. And I know that's kind of the pot calling the kettle black. I'm here selling you AI solutions. There are so many solutions out there that are just wrappers on ChatGPT. So, the first thing I would say is before you go buy something, go ask ChatGPT if it can do it. If it can do 80% of it, you'd be amazed what you can do in-house with that technology on your own. You don't need a service provider. I think the second one is this. When you look at the platforms, the technology platforms the restaurant have today, I forget the stat, but it's something like 70% of the capabilities of those platforms are not currently being utilized. So
Mhm.
one thing that AI is great at, ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of these, go tell it what your tech stack is and ask it, if I'm trying to achieve A, B, or C, can I do it with my current platforms? And it'll do a really good job at helping you, fully utilize that. So that is, okay, ChatGPT can't do it. It's not done in my current platforms. You now have the option. Is this something that I want to build or is this something I want to buy? And I always tell everybody when you're really thinking about buying versus building, know that the technology is changing so quickly that if you want to do it in-house, this is something you're going to have to continue to dedicate resources to, or it's going to be out of date much quicker than the technologies we've had in the past. And
Mhm.
then I think the last thing I'd say is if you go with an outside vendor, just make sure you know what it is outcome wise that you're really trying to achieve. Because bringing any AI solution in is not different than any of these other technology solutions. If you don't have an outcome that you're really trying to drive for, you're not going to see a lot of value. You're just going to be bringing tech in for tech's sake.
You mentioned a stat, Matt, that something like 70% of the features and function of tech is not getting used. And I can validate that. I was the editor-in-chief of HT for a decade before I took over as publisher. And we were referencing that stat 15 years ago. It has not improved, right? That's the thing that I think is so powerful for us to understand as the technology leadership community here, that the stuff that's getting rolled out to the front lines, much of it is not getting touched by those frontline employees, right? So layering more on is potentially more that's not going to get used. So your point about making sure you need it is really important.
Well, and I would say that AI has the thing it's done most in my life is things like I'm struggling with HubSpot. Being able to
Mhm.
ask AI, how do I fix this? And it give me a step-by-step direction where now I'm not having to interact with technical service or read blog articles. Like that's really where the enhancement's been.
Mhm. So you shared some cool ideas that kind of have some personal use case, right? I love the idea of like help me get better at HubSpot. What are some areas where you would say AI can be used to move the needle for restaurants as they're thinking about potential applications? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally, whenever I look at bringing AI into a restaurant, I always think, great AI should be something that your customers and staff never sees. I think of, voice AI. If I can have a conversation through the drive-through and not realize I'm talking to a computer, that is a great, great use case. Because
Mhm.
fundamentally, we want the people in the business to be focusing on the hospitality side. So whenever I think of where's the greatest opportunity, I think, how do we get our people off the computers? Less time doing inventory and looking at spreadsheets and reports and checklists, and more time interacting with the humans. So automating tasks, systemizing operations. I think anything that's there to help with efficiency. I know that, I come from demand forecasting. So, I always think of things like, how do we do our prep every day? How do we do our scheduling? If I can automate and optimize that, it's a great use case that enhances the time and, bandwidth of my management staff, and, never really actually affects, customer service.
Mm, great thoughts. Let's talk a little bit about AI and application for predictive analytics. How are you seeing it used? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so first off, I love AI and predictive analytics. AI, of the things it does best, is predict. I always use the example of Google search. You remember when you started typing into Google and it would like auto-complete what it is you're searching? Nowadays, you like almost get annoyed with Google when it's not predicting the right next word for my sentence. That's all
Mhm.
AI predicting what is the question you're going to ask. What's the next word in this sequence? ChatGPT, these large language models came out. They do the same thing. They're just so good at it. They can predict not only the word of the question, but they can start predicting the answer, start writing paragraphs, writing chapters of books, right? It's all just predicting the next word in a sequence. When I look at, predictive analytics for restaurants, it's no different. It's literally predicting the next number in a sequence. And it's really good. It's really
Mm.
good at figuring out, if I used a pound of chicken last hour, 2 pounds the next hour, it might be a pound and a half based on all my sales data. And I was going to say, on the AI front, what's really great about it is it's able to look at so many variables today. So, we're
Mhm.
predicting, what is my sales going to be tomorrow? Well, it can look at every day of sales, every hour for 10 years. It can look at how weather affects those. It can look at, how your limited time offerings and pricing, you know, it's the same thing our great general managers do, that learned intelligence. You got the manager with their finger on the pulse, except it's just now a system. So you're not as reliant on having such tenured employees to make good decisions.
Matt, I think you did a really great job of breaking it down and giving us some cool examples. I want to say thank you very much for sharing your ideas. If you're looking for some AI insight, highly recommend chatting with Matt and his team at ClearCogs. I am going to move to our next presenter. So, Christine Schindler, who is the CEO and co-founder of PathSpot. Christine's going to take the mic and put some information in front of us that looks at going beyond compliance, how to turn food safety into a scalable asset. Christine, please take it away.
Thanks, Abby. I'm so happy to be here, and I really appreciate the chance to talk a little bit about why safety may not be the first thing we think about when we think about scalability and what goes into that for a growing and expanding brand, but how we see it as uniquely tied. And I want to start with what we all think of when we think of safety today, often in our restaurant environments. We've got these logbooks, we've got manual thermometers, we've got the signs we all know, employees must wash hands before returning to work. And I think the reality is we all recognize that these systems are not keeping up with technology in many of the other investments that you may be making when it comes to running a really streamlined and effective restaurant. But also, if I ask someone, describe your most throughput store, the location that's doing the best across your whole portfolio, just describe it to me. Often, very quickly, someone will say it's really clean. And so we know inherently that having a clean restaurant, doing safety right, is like making the bed. It sets you up to be able to do the best throughput and to have a really strong and effective environment. And yet the things we lean on are these giant binders and these signs that we hope for the best and assume these things will work. I think the other thing I often think about is, no one got into this business of hospitality and the incredible group of humans we all get the opportunity to work with every day because they really wanted to fill out their safety forms. And so for us, we want to empower teams to be able to do what they do best, especially when you're growing and expanding and adding more locations. And so we created a digital technology suite to be able to take care of those day-to-day components that are critical. If we don't have safe food, where we know it's all table stakes to our day-to-day operations and capabilities, and the risk that comes with those things not being done effectively, but also make it something where it's incredibly streamlined. We can lean on the technology to take over the day-to-day monitoring requirements for these safety policies and procedures and free up team members' times to do what they do best, to focus on the food, to focus on the guest experience, to do the things that technology can't do. And so we do that with a few different technologies that I'll walk through quickly. But our objective is take all those different HACCP requirements and have a piece of technology and a tool that scales as your business scales. And the first one is hand washing, or maybe as I like to call it, AI for soap in today's world. We had created a device that mounts on the wall. Employees put their hands underneath, can instantly see if they have invisible contamination on their hands in less than 2 seconds, and use that to ensure they're safe before going to work. Then on the scalability side, right now, if you're saying to people, you got to wash your hands, it's important, 20 seconds, make sure you do it once an hour. That's in and out everyone's ear before you go into the next step. And so training for us means, how are we driving data behavior changes based off of this? How are we looking at a portfolio of restaurants and saying, hey, the number one issue we see is from broom handles. How often do we have a policy around wiping down broom handles? We don't have a policy around that. Okay, great. Let's put that into the SOPs because the broom handles are covered in fecal contamination. Or how do we drive compliance with the number of hand washes? Often I talk to a team member and they're like, I washed my hands today. Sure, I washed my hands today. Well, now that I think about it, maybe that was a few hours ago. We're incentivizing and reminding and encouraging around hand washing and hygiene behavior so that as a business grows and you're hiring more and more team members, you're in a position where you're capable of ensuring that these basic pieces that are so critical to our day-to-day functions are done right. And that doesn't go just with hand washing and hygiene, although I start there because it's such the bedrock of safety that is so critical for us all. We have expanded our solution set to be a digital system for all of the different aspects around safety and sanitation, including checklist management, specifically oriented around safety operations. Is your chicken in range? Are your fridges in range? How are we monitoring this as you're going through the scalability phase of adding more and more locations? Are they all on the same brand standards? Are they covering these same pieces day in, day out? It can be really challenging to keep up with that and to even have the brain space to do it, especially as you're multiplying, year over year. And our objective with each of these pieces of the tool is take that off of your plate. So with our temperature monitoring solution, having a system that is using AI algorithms to actually know what's in the refrigerators and know when something is unsafe versus not, and alerting people when those issues are happening, and also ensuring you don't walk into a cooler filled with melted ice cream that you can't sell the next day. And we take all of these different modules and we use them, to really put enterprises in control of their own destiny with the information that they have access to. And our goal with that is you're thinking about adding more and more locations to a brand and scaling. Is these pieces that we know are so important being done right? Are the expiration components being communicated effectively? Do we have the different orientation around chicken being monitored correctly? Is everyone washing their hands? These things that we know are basic, but taking it off of your plate and then being able to use the data piece to go in and actually see at a district level, an individual manager level, or at a broader level, where are our gaps? What are we missing? How do we run a really effective training to fix that? How do we build that into our SOPs so we can expand upon it? And we integrate the system into, all the daily operations. I think being able to integrate those most critical pieces into the pieces of the operation that team members are already doing takes training and makes it something that's easy to do. If you're washing your hands and it's telling you that your temps are out of range, or you're filling out your label expiration and it's reminding you that you haven't washed your hands, it turns safety into something that is just inherent. Just every minute, you know exactly what you need to be doing. And then at a leadership level, you know that those things were actually done. And from that, we're not only able to prevent customer and employee illness, which of course we want to create healthy and safe environments for our businesses, but we also are able to enhance the training, unlock cost and time savings, actually learn from operational efficiencies across this data that may have been being missed, and then build that culture around sanitation and around safety with something you can actually track, incentivize, and reward against. I think that's often why safety is hard to manage amidst all of this. Like, how do I encourage someone to have a safe environment? I know it matters. I know it makes an impact on my teams. I know my top managers are doing it. But to Matt's perspective that he shared earlier, how can we lean on technology to make sure that everyone is operating to the level of that top manager that's been with the business for 10 years? And how do we do that with something as critical as safety? And I think from that, back to the scalability side, what is the benefit of this? By being able to have operational data around something, you're not only creating that scalable process for each team member to be treating safety like they have 20 years of experience in safety processes, but you're also freeing them up to make smart decisions throughout the day. They're not wondering, what should I do? My manager looks really busy. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. All of this is built into their day-to-day operations and makes them more efficient and more effective labor component across the board. So I'm really excited to share why I think, safety is such a critical piece of scaling a business. And, whether you want to go with a technology solution or just want to talk about what are the safety elements that are most critical to keep in mind as you work towards that growth ability, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to share more. Thank you.
Christine, thank you so much. I love this example when we're thinking about scaling and growth, because it reminds us of how important it is to just have your operational house in order, right? And how important it is to have the people that are in those front lines well supported, right? Matt made that point earlier as well, right? Make the technology there to make it easier for the folks that are on the front lines. I'm thinking back to when I spent time on stage at Mertech, and we had the CEO of Red Lobster on stage, and we talked about, right, okay, you're coming into this environment where you are bouncing back from bankruptcy and trying to turn this brand around. And what were some of his early observations? And he talked about how important it was to just retrain frontline staff to do something as simple as address a guest when they walk in the door. And even like in the hospitality market, even that had been forgotten. And it wasn't that they didn't care. In fact, when he got in there, people were super stoked to start to revitalize that brand. But we were also dealing with a layer of individuals who, from a demographic perspective, are not as comfortable with like open social interactions, right? Very digital native. So let's use that and put tools in their hand and make it easier for them to do their jobs, so that we can then spend time training them on the softer skills, like how to interact with guests. So I love these ideas and these examples of scaling. We are going to bring next to the mic, I'm super stoked to bring Tony Roy. Tony is the president and co-founder of Pop Menu, and Tony's going to talk about building a scalable guest database and learning how to increase revenue by turning first-time guests into lifelong fans. That's critical to growth and scaling. Tony, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, and hopefully I'll be able to share a couple of nuggets here. I'd like to both the first two presentations, and I think with Matt, like what I always tell people around AI is what we consult restaurants on is, can you afford to be the only one that's not learning about it or testing it? And I do think there are a lot of easy ways to do that. Usually you're probably working with somebody who's incorporated AI into their platform, for example, like Pop Menu, and things like generating copy allows you to produce more, more social posts, more emails, faster, cheaper. And I think consistency is a big part of the game. So good topic. I'm going to jump around. I know we've got limited time. I'm going to talk about this, but I want to start by going a little bit off script and showing this, because I think this is really important. This is probably, if this is you potentially, I want you to know that you're missing out, and literally overnight you can change your business. The reality is a lot of people will invest in many things in terms of how they build out their digital footprint. When in reality, I would argue, and I have a lot of data to back this up, is this is by far your biggest sales tool. And this is by far the most underinvested asset for almost every restaurant in the country, really in the world, because we're global and we see the same things. And now what you've seen more recently or in the last few years is people start to incorporate visual content, which is a great first step. But I'm going to show you that by actually making this a more dynamic experience, whether that's through Pop Menu or somebody else that you might be partnering with, it really opens you up to so many other things. And if I told you that this person right here is spending 5 times more for 10 times worse results, you would probably say, well, how do I change that? Consumers want more information. And if they don't get that from you, they go look at other restaurants or other platforms before making a decision. The reality is you're missing out on traffic. You're missing out on really valuable insights to know the things that Matt is engaging with, what Abby loves, the things that Mona wants to try. And so I want you to think about as we go through this, imagine this being a more dynamic experience where now you go to a website, and then when you go to the menu page, now all of a sudden, let's go here and look at dinner, and let's just look at a bad mobile or my bad way of showing you, but now a mobile experience that has a lot of other things happening here. Visual content, the ability for people to tell you things they love, things they want to try, read and write reviews. It's not just changing the appearance so that more people are engaging with you and then choose you, but it's also picking up a lot of insights and doing so many other things for you. And so I want to talk a lot about that. And I'll show you another restaurant of ours, because now I want to show you that the longer somebody is on the platform, more people engage with it. And I really want you to understand the power of what I'm about to show you, which is this is actually a great way to build up a significant database of followers that you know intimate details about. And so here you can see the longer on the platform, more happens. What I want to start by saying, I think the most important thing for any tool that you're using today is first you need to cast the widest net possible. How do you maximize people finding your business online and coming to you? One of the best ways to do that is optimizing for Google. That's where a vast majority of searches start when people are looking for a new dining or ordering experience. You'll notice that when I hover over this item in the bottom left, there's a little web address. And as I change, excuse me, hover over different items, that web address is changing. If I told you that that first restaurant I showed you is spending $3,000 a month, and I would tell you that this person for a single location is spending $300 a month, and that this person right here that I'm showing you has 820,000 followers and the other one has 4,000 followers, you'd say something's out of whack there. Why are we doing that? Because when people run a search for best Mexican food in Atlanta, best Italian in Chicago, we want to make sure that our customers are showing up first. And if you are a restaurant, you want to make sure that you have the best position possible. It's not just for that, but imagine running a bit more specific search, shrimp and grits Atlanta. What you're going to see is everyone here is a Pop Menu customer. Now, this isn't a Pop Menu sales pitch. It's more to say the architecture of how we make that menu dynamic is really opening you up to so many things, optimizing your traffic channels and so on. Best milkshakes in Chicago, JoJo's Shake Bar. Really a best AI, it's AI as summaries are pulling up the SEO piece. And even in small towns like Best Breakfast in Forsyth, Georgia, which is a really small community, you're going to see that a Pop Menu customer comes up. Again, this is more about showing you that your menu can be doing so many more things for you. And if you haven't invested in making that a more dynamic experience, I think it's one of the fastest, easiest ways to change the trajectory of your business. So I want to go back to the slide, and I want to go to my boring PowerPoint, which I hate doing PowerPoint, but I'm going to show you how you can quickly build a robust list of contacts. If I told you that capturing a guest, their information, their email, their phone number, if I told you that that was worth $814 for every email that you captured, would you be more emphatic about capturing it? I think you would, but people don't think about that. They're like, oh, it's just an email. Well, if I know things, if I know who Abby is, and I know things about how she's engaging with the decision point, the menu, then that's really valuable, because now I can market to her in a way that's really focused to her specific preferences. So she's going to come in or order 8 times a year. And 4 of those times, she's going to bring 2 or 3 other people who've never been to your restaurant or ordered from your restaurant. They become followers. One of them will do a catering gig maybe every 18 months. The value of capturing Abby is incredibly valuable. So I'm going to show you that that's really something every restaurant should be emphatic about. And then I'm going to show you how to basically keep them engaged and turn them into lifelong fans. I want to start with this. This is actually a chart showing 2 customers who were on Pop Menu and they left. You can probably see when they left. That's basically that architecture that I'm showing you. What you see on the far right is that they came back to us. A free website or a cheap website is likely costing you far more than you can imagine. If anything is free, I always question those things, right? If I gave you $10, or if you spent $10 and didn't get anything back, that's an expense. If you invested $1,000 and got $8,000 back, you would do that all day long. I think if you think about your website and specifically your menu experience being different, then I think you can have a lot of change. This is what I showed you before. The first thing is really optimizing, make sure that you're easily found on Google, across social, all those types of things, allowing consumers to easily share you from the decision point. That's a great way to cast a wide net. First responsibility, drive as much people to you as possible, optimizing free channels. The second thing is once they get there, have a unique experience which meets consumer preferences so you convert more of those people into your transaction path. The third thing is how do you learn about them, their preferences, their what they like, what they want to try, events they want to attend. Because now all of a sudden, using AI, automation, or just manual work, your marketing outreach is highly specific. This is really what I just showed you here, is that if you have multiple touch points where you can capture and engage with people, entice them to join your community and become a VIP or join your loyalty program, encourage them to read and write reviews, share that experience, tell you things they love. All those things are opportunities, just like the ordering path, to capture those guest insights. This is an example of a multi-unit operator in the Nashville area, Steam Boys, great customer. And what you see is they have now, this is a little bit dated. I think they're over 60,000 followers now. I think they're 5 or 6 locations. I could be off by one. But what you typically see is these automated emails, which go out without the restaurant having to do anything or incur any other costs. They perform significantly higher than mass messaging because they're more tailored. A good example would be, because I make my menu dynamic, now people can tell me the things they love. Well, let's imagine that Mona tells you she loves the pumpkin gnocchi. And let's imagine that you take that off the menu, but 4 months later, you bring it back. Most restaurants won't even know who Mona is, and they certainly don't know what she loves, and they likely don't have multiple ways to communicate with her. And even if they did, do they really have the time, or do they have to spend money to message her when the pumpkin gnocchi comes back? There's a lot of challenges that you can solve by having a dynamic system and then incorporating other aspects like AI or automation. And what you see is a lot of our automated emails, let's use that pumpkin gnocchi example. Now imagine that 5 months later, you bring it back. Well, because the menu's dynamic, you now know that 78 people love that item because you let them tell you. And now imagine that as soon as you bring it back on your menu without having to do anything, the system will recognize that and automatically message those 78 people on your behalf for free. Hey, Abby, hey, Tony, guess what's back? Your favorite, the pumpkin gnocchi. Are 78 people going to order or come in and make a reservation that night? Of course not. 7 or 8 will. 3 or 4 will tomorrow when they read the communication. Now imagine that times how many locations you have or how many items. And you can see pretty quickly that turning that menu experience into a more dynamic thing not only is better for the consumer, significantly better for you, and it drastically improves your remarketing efforts. So I think that's really important. And this is just another one validating it. Max is a great Filipino concept. And what you see on the left is they sent about a fifth of this volume of emails, had a much higher open rate, but they made a third of the revenue. And so you can clearly see that treating your menu and being emphatic about allowing guests to engage with you can really have a drastic change to your business, whether you're a single location operator or a 50 location operator across multiple concepts. These are just another examples of automation and things that are happening because we know more about people. This is Breakfast Brothers. Here you can see that because we know more information, they leverage an AI marketing tool, which actually plans out their entire calendar for them, which they can quality control and evaluate. But those things are happening automatically, and they're based on really smart data, real data that's happening in your business. I think that's another important thing that I would say about AI is make sure that it's using real imagery, real content that's happening in your business. You don't want to send out a bunch of things that are not a true reflection of your operation, because that could create some questions about authenticity. So I think that's really important. And then here's just another multi-unit operator, La Paria. Very quickly, they added over 100,000 guest contacts without having to do anything. They just made it dynamic. And so I do think that's really important. And again, you can see the open rates here. And this is what we talked about before is the segmentation, because you now have greater data, will always outperform any sort of mass message. I think of mass messaging as a touch point that needs to happen occasionally, but it is in some ways operating blind. If my wife is vegan and she keeps getting messages about the pork ribs, she's not only not going to engage, she likely will unsubscribe. So think about how you can consolidate all this information. I do think about your website, specifically your menu, being an active sales force for you, because it really is if you invest in the right things. There are other services out there that will have other ways you can engage. So I think about, if you're using a tool today, think about where all the touch points you have today operating. And if you don't, then I'd seek some of those things out. But I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. I could go all day, but I do think that I keep echoing what Matt said, because I really, it resonates. I do think restaurants have been overcharged or missold on technology for a long time. I think there's a lot of good stuff out there, and then I think there's other things. I can just sell you something, or I can actually try and solve some challenges. Challenges are immense, but I do think they're relatively easy to solve in some ways if you just invest in the right things and think about your menu being a real sales channel for you rather than just a placeholder or a business card. So hopefully got some nuggets out of there. Happy to answer questions at the end. I'll stop here.
Tony, perfectly stated. Tony Roy, the president and co-founder with Pop Menu. And I love the notion of really reinforcing that your menu is your best. That is your best salesperson, right? So let's power that up, because you can scale the heck out of that. You don't need to add people to scale your menu.
If you think visual content's important, if you think reviews are helpful for influencing consumers or educating them, then why not control those narratives, and why not you be the one capturing all those insights? It's logical, right?
Yeah. Good stuff, Tony. Thank you so much. We are going to keep the conversation moving. We've been talking about some really cool applications that you can bring to life in a restaurant environment. Well, any application requires the infrastructure to support it. And so I'm really excited to have a chat now. I'm going to bring to the mic with me Courtney Radke, who is the Vice President of Innovation with SageNet, to talk a bit about mastering a scalable network. Courtney, great to have you here. Yeah. Let's start with the first thing. Let's just debunk some myths right off the bat, right? People assume that bigger brands have an advantage when it comes to networks. Courtney, give us the real take on this.
Yeah, big brands don't have any problems. I mean, that's really that's what it is. Yeah. So it's, you get your paycheck, but you spend it faster. And that's really what happens with big brands as well. They may have more budget, but the scale is higher. The stakes are higher. So they have to support a lot more. So that doesn't mean that small brands have it easy, though. They have a blueprint. They can look at what's already been out there, but they may not have the resources. And I love what Tony and Matt have both said, that there's a lot of technology out there, especially in today's world. So there's a lot of access these smaller brands have to a lot of technology, but making that right choice, it's a sea of choices that are out there. So big brands can buy more, but that means that they have to scale more. And that means that they have a lot more inertia. Sometimes when technology initiatives are in flight at a big brand, even if it wasn't the right choice, it's moving. It's got to keep going. So it's not that the problems are smaller or that they have less problems. It's just kind of different ways to look at it. The vision is most important, not necessarily the scale. Whether you're big or small, does the vision match where you want to go in 3 to 5 years?
So another myth I want to debunk a little bit is downtime, right? I think it's possible to say a little bit about downtime is not a big deal, that being offline is a normal thing. I will tell you, I was offline for a couple hours when my network was getting upgraded at home. And if I were running a business at that moment, I would have been completely hosed. It was like I could not manage it through my phone. So what's the real cost of downtime?
I mean, it's subjective because it depends on the business you're doing, but look at it this way. While we're not all McDonald's doing 9 billion a quarter through digital channels, we're doing a lot more digital than we've ever done before. We're doing a lot more only online transactions than ever. I don't remember the last time I carried cash. If I do, it escapes me when my wife goes shopping, so it's not there anymore. But nobody is carrying cash predominantly anymore. We're doing card not present. We're doing my watch. I travel with that all the time. But the moment you go somewhere and you can't do those transactions, it's a problem. So, we know that 2/3 runs through a drive-through from a revenue standpoint. We know that it's actually much quicker growing for digital transactions for adults. Over 60% have now moved into digital transactions. So, digital is king. Non-cash is starting to be more prevalent, and you have to be online to do that. If we just look at it from even just a couple years ago, maybe a day was okay. You'd get by, but it really, really hurt. But that turned to 8 hours, and that turned to an hour, and now it's turned to, 9 billion in a quarter. Let's roll that down to 10 minutes. That's still a lot of money. And so any downtime is really not acceptable anymore, because if you're down, chances are your competitor up the street maybe isn't.
It's just too easy for people to make a different choice today.
Yeah.
So we've talked about downtime. Let's flip the script. I've heard you talk about this notion of experience-driven networks, right? Tell us a little bit about what an experience-driven network is.
Yeah. So when we just talked about, downtime there is it's really not if you're up or if you're down. You can be up but still providing a terrible experience for your customers. If things aren't integrated, if the apps aren't getting where they need to go, if you need to make sure that your mobile app is making calls in a GCP or AWS or something, but there's a process in the background or cameras that are streaming data that aren't prioritized, eating all your bandwidth, it doesn't matter if you have the best app in the world if it's not getting to where it needs to go. So it's less about up, down. Yes, speed is great, but I've talked about it as, more bandwidth being the Ferrari, but then getting stuck behind a bunch of cars getting off the interstate. It doesn't matter if it's not prioritized correctly. So do it based off of outcomes, not based off of speed. Do it based off of intent of what do I want my customers to experience, and then you build around that. So we talk about experience-driven networking, meaning it is the plumbing, but you got to make sure you know where the water has to go and how to route it effectively.
So what I love what you're talking about. It's kind of the difference between defining your network defensively or defining it to be on the offense, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it looks like to build a network to play for the offense.
Well, so think about sports. When's the time that most people get hurt? It's when they're playing not to get hurt, or it's if you're playing not to lose. You have to play to win. So you've got to make sure that you're setting that up from the get-go. And unfortunately, there's a lot of brands that are out there, especially large brands, that have deployed networks and they're trying to do things for today and tomorrow on networks of yesterday, as I've talked about. There's chances to upgrade, especially more options than ever before. But you really have to look at the network being that enabler to revenue, being that enabler to new revenue streams and new ways to do business versus, man, I hope it doesn't go down. Man, I hope it doesn't go down. You've got to build for resilience and plan for success versus failure. This means multiple links are no longer really an option. Just have to have it. Having the network have visibility into what applications are running on your network and where they need to go. Again, it's not a nice to have, you just have to have it. So building for those things to allow for now your AI drive-through, now your drive-through analytics can work. Now your AI ops that spots issues on your network and says, I've seen this before, let's just go ahead and fix it before it becomes a problem. That is now enabled. You think about, we talked about, analytics. Let's show how that screen that I put in, somebody looking at it was smiling and it led me directly to this sale. You do that when all of your stuff is interconnected. You don't have that if you don't have a network that enables all of it. So don't plan for it just to not go down. If you're making the investment anyway, allow your network to drive revenue as well.
So follow the sports analogy. We're writing a playbook. You got a one-page playbook. What are the non-negotiables if you're writing a playbook for a brand?
Yeah, so that first one again is the resilience. And it's not just resilience. You have to have resiliency, reliability, and redundancy, kind of that 3 R's. Keeping with the sports reference, it's, have you done your training? Have you got punched, and can you get back up, and then can I just avoid some punches? So that's that 3 R's there. But then we also have visibility. We have to be able to see what's happening, and then we have to be able to measure it. Because if you can't measure it, you can't scale it. If you don't know the impact that a good network has versus a bad network, you're never going to be able to scale that out effectively. One of the hardest sells still in a technology organization is network, is the underlying infrastructure. It's just seen as it's always going to be there, right? Well, now you have to be able to tie into digital, tie into marketing, tie into the CFO. If you show how having a better network has a significant increase on your operational efficiency, increases the bottom line, allows you to reach into new markets, now you are tying yourself to the business and not just being that cost center. So that's my biggest thing. Have those 3 R's. Have that visibility, and then you have to be able to measure your success on the network. Otherwise, again, you're just going to be seen as a cost center.
Yeah. So I love this notion of really reinforcing how important the network is to enable all of these incredible capabilities and experiences. Closing thoughts from you, Courtney. One thing that the audience should never forget when they are designing for success with today's networks.
Yeah. It was interesting. Christine talked about it earlier of, you don't often think about like washing your hands or something like that. Well, network is looked at as the plumbing. It's not sexy most of the time, but it's really, really great when it's there. And the analogy to that is, The guests coming into the restaurants don't see uptime. They don't see it. It's just happening. All of these things are amazing, but they do feel downtime. They know when something's wrong. Now, we are getting to the point where network and the digital coming together, you can walk into a restaurant and you don't know exactly what's better about the one you walked in this time than last time, but you know something's different. Maybe it's the behind the scenes, and that's the network and digital coming together driving that unified experience. But the one mic drop, the one takeaway I would say is, again, the customers, the guests coming in, they're not going to see it until it's not there, and then they're really going to feel it, and you wish you'd made that investment. So that's really where I'd leave that.
Yeah. Amen. I had downtime at home, as I said a couple days ago, and it was brutal.
Yeah.
Right. And then everything had to be reset. Not
Yeah.
fun. So highly recommend thinking about the network first and foremost. Courtney, thank you so much. Great insight. We have one more RTN member that we're going to bring to the mic to talk a bit about scaling. And I'm super excited for this conversation. Casey Badaka Merrifield, now at Solugenics. Casey, welcome to the share group. Good to have you here. Casey, give us just kind of just give us a brief overview. Tell us a little bit about what Solugenics does.
Yeah, I was also going to say bad timing. I was trying to do my mic drop emojicon for Court, but it made it look like I was just excited for myself to take the mic. What a loser move on my part. So, hi everyone. As you know, I'm usually on the operator side of the house, so I've transitioned to the dark side for all of you operators out there. But I will say it's for very good reason. Solugenics has been some company that I have partnered with on the operator side for many years, off and on, and it seems like they never had a problem, or we never had a problem that they couldn't help us solve, and we're very engaged with getting to that solution. So, in in short, there's no short way to say it. Let me tell you that. But Solugenics specializes in managed IT services, specifically for QSR in this case, but spanning operations, engineering, enterprise support, so many things, process improvement, and also dabbles in both sides, the operator and the guest. So lots of just support, just your good pal. Think of it that way.
So Casey, it's really cool, right? You're hearing all of these examples that some of our tech partners are sharing, and you all are in the world now of having to make all of these moving parts come together and implement and manage and like wrap arms around all of these pieces. Can you walk us through, I'd love a case study, right? If you can share one, can you walk us through an example, a real world example of how you helped a restaurant scale, improve their operations?
Yeah, I'm learning so many cool ones since joining, but the one that just popped out at me recently was there's a tool that Solugenics implemented. It was a solution that really just they were able to field refunds, both full and partial. So from an operator side, that's always been a problem, is refund management and fraud detection and revenue recognition, all of these keywords from the ops side. And so I heard about a solution they had, and it was basically they would field those requests from the guests. They would implement there was a couple of different things, but first they would make sure it was a legit request. Then they had dupe detection in the background. So if it was the same number or same customer ID or same check, making sure that if those came through, we weren't allowing that to happen. And we saw a significant reduction in those fraud cases, and found that a lot of those were bots just continuing to hit that same check number and amount, and so stopping them after one and then locking down that account after three. Like, you're not gonna keep doing this if you're a real person, but if you're a bot, we're gonna get you. We're gonna know.
I love it. Casey, I know integration is a topic that's near and dear to your heart because you've been part of the RTN community and working towards integration and standards for quite a while now, and we certainly thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about now, through the Solugenics lens, the power of integration. Talk to us a little bit about some of the ways that you are thinking through how to implement technology without causing friction, right? We're talking about scalability here to make restaurant systems even stronger. What's the Solugenics perspective on that?
I think what is very unique and impressive about Solugenics is it's been in the QSR, support industry for a long time, and years and years of knowledge base articles and learnings and things to implement tools. So we're looking now at things like IVR, phone agentic AI. So, you have natural language processors and you have LLMs, and they've all come a long way in the last few years. We've seen it happen. It's exciting. But I think having the industry specific terminology, knowledge, solutions, and the ability to reference those types of articles to give reliable answers back to the operator every time is so impressive and unique and can be such a tool. So I think also having the ability to have these agentic, more realistic, more conversational AI tools really helps you hone in on like the brand voice, how you want it to speak to you, how you want to engage with it. And you can tweak these personas, the type. I think about my Waze person. My Waze person has been an 80s workout trainer for a long time, and she gets me going. I feel great when I talk to her, like I'm driving happily. And it's kind of the same thing with these agentic AI tools is what does your brand tonality look like when your operator calls, what's their experience? Because I think that's just as important as how they reflect that same tonality back to your guests, which is also your brand perception. So I think just bringing all those together is invaluable, and it's hard to put a price on, but it does make a difference in things like retention and quality.
So tell me a little bit about the partnerships that Solugenics is really prioritizing, some of the ways that you're working with partners and some of the brands, right, that you're collaborating with to start to bring some of this to market.
Yeah, so I actually encountered Solugenics, as I mentioned, as an operator with Sonic years and years and years ago. And we were small, we were private, and we were hurting in the transition of technology and support and how to manage bringing some of the new technology. As I think it was maybe Matt at the very beginning said, you have with new technology comes support. If you decide to build, you're going to have to support ongoing. So these are not build, release, and go about your day. It's product management. It doesn't ever end. The product life cycle is never ending when you build. So I think that was a key for Sonic being able to grow and then go public. When they went public and were acquired by Inspire, the scale of Inspire's portfolio grew exponentially, of course, but the relationship that they had already built with Sonic and the extension of that same relationship into the Inspire brands has been seamless and has only expanded the opportunities for both Solugenics and for Inspire. But I think it's been refreshing from even the outside watching Sonic go from a small private company and be acquired by a large, public company and still maintain that relationship with them and even expand past that.
So you've been on the operator side in a variety of roles. You've now moved over onto the supplier side to help other brands leverage all that experience you've earned and help other brands work through scaling and growth. Casey, any kind of your big recommendation, closing thoughts on smart scaling for restaurants?
I'm going to give you a heart answer and not a technical answer, which is find partners that truly have your best interest and that value relationships. We are hospitality. We are built on relationships, and that's what makes lasting brands truly. So I think if you find partners that have your best interests, and that's a big part of why I joined Solugenics. I was always being tapped, even when I wasn't a customer of theirs, and those relationships of saying, hey, what problems are you facing or hearing about? Like, we want to help, but we want to make sure we're focusing on the right place. And that meant the world to me, coming from the operator side and having someone that wasn't looking to sell me something. In fact, I wasn't a customer. It was more like, hey, we want to help in a big way, and what could that be? So I would suggest scaling is important, and it's important to do it with people that also want to be your partner.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about this industry is that at the core, the people that are showing up on these meetings and going to MERTEC and other industry shows that we're always talking about, it's service, right? At the end of the day, at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, we're talking about creating moments and memories and experiences for our fellow people on their Earth walk to have a great time to come into those restaurants. So I love that recommendation. We are just about at the top of the hour. I did want to do just a quick all call to the folks that are listening in with us. If anyone has any thoughts or comments for our panel, you want to put your hand up, please feel free to do so. We can call on you if there are any closing thoughts before we wrap up from anybody in the membership community. Any hands up? I feel like an auctioneer, right? Going once, going twice. We've covered so many really cool topics today. Thank you to all of our members and panelists for sharing some great recommendations on how to scale and grow. Love the format of this share group. We'll keep the conversation moving as we meet in future meetings. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.